Emily with Miss Anita's Crafts, and I've been looking up a lot of spring crafts to try to get some inspiration on Pinterest, and I see all these really cool sun catchers. And the ones that I've been seeing lately for spring are butterflies. A butterfly that kind of looks like this, so I kind of sketched my own. It just looks like some little window cling. It's a little piece of plastic. It's really cool. It's transparent. It's got, you could tell that they use tissue paper squares on it. And then it has a really cool outline, a really bold, dark, usually a black outline around the shape. And I see all kinds. You'll see a whole bunch of them on Pinterest. You'll see them seasonally. So I saw some fall leaf ones, some turkeys around, Thanksgiving time. I saw some Christmas trees around December. And now I'm seeing all the butterflies, and they're really cool. So I've watched some of the videos and I've looked at some of the posts a little more in depth, kind of follow their instructions, and I can't quite figure out what they're doing to put the butterfly together. So I wanted to kind of make a video that showed my own version of what I think they're doing to make these really cool sun catchers. I started with a sketch like this, and my goal, my aim for this was to make a craft that is something that a kid could do from start to finish, something that could be entirely theirs, not anything that the adult has to intervene and make for them. And the problem is with a lot of these crafts that I see on Pinterest is, and I'm going to start to get my little squares cut out, but a problem is with a lot of these crafts that I see, it seems like the adults have to do a lot of prep work before the kid can actually get involved in the crafting. And I think that's a big problem, because the fun part is the kids getting their hands in it, the kids getting involved and doing it all on their own, not needing an adult to do 75% of it, and then maybe the kids just get to stick it all together. It's not really made by the kid when, the adult has to come in and do most of the work ahead of time. So I wanted to make something that was something that a kid could do. Like I said, kind of from start to finish. It is all 100% theirs and totally unique and, imperfect, because that's kind of what you want. You don't want it to look like it was store-bought. You want it to look like something that your kid made by hand. So I'm going to get all my little tissue paper squares cut out. I have all these really cool colors, nice bright colors for spring. And then we'll get started on putting together the actual base of the Suncatcher. So far what I've done is something that a kid could easily do. You can give them kids scissors to do this, just cut out little small pieces. They don't have to be perfect squares. That's what I did because it just made sense as I was cutting along the edge of the paper. But these could even be torn into little pieces by hand, and that actually adds to, the different components to the task, because then it gives a kid something that they could do where they're actually tearing and ripping the tissue paper, which is something that they might often not get to do because, we usually are showing them how to cut something or keep it neat. We're not usually letting them rip something up into pieces. So it's just adding a little extra dimension to the craft and gives them extra things to practice with their hands. So I got my little pile of colorful tissue paper squares. Now this comes in where I've got this drawing of the butterfly or whatever shape you're going to do. I would recommend a simple shape, nothing too crazy, maybe a flower, springtime, something that's maybe an Easter egg, something with a simple shape without too many angles or edges. All right, now comes the part where you might have to get a little creative, because not everybody's going to have the same materials to use for this part. Now, when I looked online, it kind of looked like for the clear part, the base, which is something transparent, plasticky, it looked like people were using pockets, like a self-laminating pouch or pocket. So it's something that had a back and front, but both were clear, and it sort of sealed somehow all of the little pieces of tissue paper together. Definitely looked like the part that a kid could not do on their own. And so I wanted to, again, kind of find a way to combat that, make this 100% kid-friendly from start to finish. So I have these lids, and we have a lot of packaging. We use a lot of plastic packaging, and we throw a lot of stuff away. So this is actually the lid to a really big cookie cake. But, get creative with whatever you could use. Any kind of plastic packaging that you throw away. If it's some kind of a bottle from something that can be cut and you can use a part of it, like the 2-liter plastic bottles. It doesn't have to be a picture this big. Your Suncatcher can be small. This is just something that I wanted to use to fit this size. So this is a 10-inch lid for a cookie cake, and the butterfly fits in there pretty well. So then I'm just holding it right on top like this so I can see it through the plastic, of course. And then I'll use a Sharpie. You just hold it down with one hand, and then you're just going to trace your butterfly as well as you can right onto the plastic bottom of the lid. Okay, so he's on there now. And then we'll take a pair of scissors And again, this might be a little tricky for a kid to do, but it's really good practice for them to use their hands, get to practice their fine motor skills, get a little bit of dexterity workout here, because they're having to try to cut through something that is not the easiest to cut through, but it's also not the hardest. It's just not like cutting through paper, which is what they're used to. So it is good for them to practice something. They start to say, this is hard, I don't know how to do it, and we want to intervene immediately and do it for them. But this is definitely something that a kid can do. Doesn't require a whole lot of strength or skill. You just have to kind of do a little problem solving and figure out, how am I going to get past that little bump there? How am I going to get around all these funky edges that are not working with me, as well as a piece of paper would. It is so good for them to practice this kind of stuff. So don't do it for them. Let them get as far as they can with this part. And then if maybe there's a couple little areas they want you to just fix up because maybe they're not too happy with the way it turned out, maybe you can round off some of those edges for them or something when they're all done. But let them try it before you jump in and do it for them. So here's our little plastic butterfly. It's okay that we can still see some Sharpie lines on there. I didn't cut them all off, but that's okay. We're going to cover this whole thing up anyways. Now that we have the edge of it and we pretty much used all of it, I wouldn't save this for anything, but if you can think of anything that you could maybe use the extra little scrappy pieces for, you could definitely use that for something. Save it, maybe even cut away some of the bigger pieces that are nice to use for something. And I think people even have a way to use stuff like this kind of plastic to make their own Shrinky Dinks, which I haven't tried, but I think it's totally possible. So save stuff like that if you ever want to try, a different type of craft. But anyway, for the meantime, we're going to put that away and we're going to work on the next little step on this guy. Okay, now for the next step, we are going to use Mod Podge. I have a glossy kind. It's just what I like to use on all my projects that require Mod Podge, but you could use watered down Elmer's glue. You could use the matte Mod Podge. You could use any kind of other type of paste that you like to use. It doesn't have to be this brand, but this is what I like. And I have a foam brush, so I've always used a foam brush when I apply Mod Podge to any surface, but you could use a regular brush. I don't know why I always go to a foam brush, but that's what I do. Anyway, you can't really see it too well, not yet anyways, but I have it on a piece of wax paper just to protect my work surface, and I'm just going to start to apply a little bit of glue on a corner of this butterfly, just enough to put a square of tissue paper on there. And I've done crafts like this before for you guys, so some of you already know how to do this, but I'm going to put a little bit right there. I'm going to put this on there. And I'm going to get a little bit of glue on my brush and go over it to seal it down. You could use more glue than that if you want. I just like to do it thin so it dries fast. You can overlap these. So you'll find that some of these colors don't look very nice when you overlap them. For instance, yellow and purple doesn't look really good when you overlap them. But yellow and green, or maybe blue and purple, might look nice when you start to some kind of effect like that. So try different things. But I'm going to cover this whole butterfly, overlapping as I go, in these little tissue paper squares that we've cut. Okay, so I'm going to put this guy kind of overlapping a little bit so that will have a cool look when we're done with that. Go right over it again, fill the whole thing up. You want to cover all the way to the edges of the wings, and just to show an example here, I'll show you what you can do when you get to the edge of the wing. If you're not sure what to do about those little funny rounded parts, you could do this, and you could go to the back, and you could just stick it down right there on the back by wrapping it around like that. Okay. So we're going to keep going, and we're going to do this whole thing. And I don't know, but as I'm looking at it, I'm starting to wonder if maybe I should stick to only a few colors. Maybe I'll do all the colors. Haven't decided yet. I'll figure it out as I go. Now these foam brushes are a pain in the butt to wash because, they soak up all that glue. So you kind of sometimes want to let them soak in a cup of water for a while before you wash them. But they do put a nice thick layer of glue down for you, a little more than what you could get from a regular bristle brush, which is probably why I like using them so much. I'm just placing the last few little pieces down here, trying to kind of evenly disperse all of the colors of the tissue paper so I don't see too much of one or not enough of others. But, don't be this picky when your kids are making this, because this is supposed to be a fun thing. I just like to be super picky sometimes about my colors for no reason at all. Alright, so let's fill in a couple more gaps. And then we're going to kind of fold all those extra little corner pieces. You can even cut them off if you want to let it dry, but I wouldn't recommend cutting them right now, because your glue is still wet, and you're going to get glue all over your scissors if you do. Another thing I like to do while all this glue is still sticky, and I might apply a little more just to little areas where we kind of first started, because that might be drying a little bit. I like to apply a little bit of this glitter dust. It's actually called glamour dust. And it's my favorite of all the glitters. They don't sell in the store anymore. I have to buy it online. So whenever I do, I just buy it in bulk because I never know if they're going to stop selling it. So worry about my favorite products, and I like to make sure I stock up and have plenty. So with this stuff, it's really, really fine. It's finer than, I don't know, powder or flour or whatever. It's just really small little pieces. So I go up high and just turn it sideways, kind of just shake very slightly as I'm up high. And just start to let the dust fall and sort of spread out. The higher you go, the more it'll spread out. So that's why I like to go from up high and just kind of lightly dust the area. Don't pour, don't ever tip it upside down, because this stuff will just come right out of the bottle and you can't really get it back in, especially after it's been stuck all over something. So just a nice little extra touch on there. Put your glue away. We're done with that. So now we're at this point and we're almost done. Of course, you see a lot of white on there from the glue because the Mod Podge is not quite dry yet, but when it dries, it'll be nice and, you know, sheer to be able to put up in a window and kind of see through it to see the colors overlapping. Really cool. So now what I want to do is, I talked about earlier, they have usually these nice little outlines around them. So I want to put an outline, and I'm going to do it in yarn. So I've got, this is Walmart yarn. Walmart yarn is really cheap. It's less than $3 for this whole skein. This is like the size you'd get if you bought Red Heart, but Red Heart is a lot more money. So I like to buy the Walmart one because they actually have a lot of really good colors. Some people say don't pull your yarn from the middle, but it's just so easy, so I always do. I know it comes out a little curly, but it doesn't really matter. Okay. So I'm going to cut plenty to go around the butterfly, and that's probably good right there. All right, and then to apply the yarn, I'm going to use tacky glue. So I don't like using Elmer's glue for stuff like this because Elmer's glue is just too watery. And for something like yarn, or if you're gluing foam or a felt, you need something that's a little bit stronger, a little bit thicker. So I'm going to use tacky glue. And so I just have, you know, I'm just going to be squeezing right from the bottle. And this stuff will take probably a whole day to dry. Tacky glue is a slow dry glue, but it's thick and it's strong. And you know that whatever you're gluing is not going to come off if you're using tacky glue. It's really good for kids' crafts too. So again, this is something that your kids can do. You don't have to do this for them. They just have to go slow. But being able to squeeze while also moving their hand around to the outline shape of the butterfly, that's a really good skill for them to practice. It's really good coordination because they have to focus on two things at one time. So let them practice this. Let them do this. You want a nice thick line of glue. So even if they put out too much glue, that's fine. Actually looks really cool like that, but tacky glue is going to dry clear. But it just gives me the idea that if you wanted to use white yarn to outline something like this, because we didn't use any white tissue paper, that'd be kind of cool too. So I'm going to start right here on the wing, and you're going to get a little gluey, but you're just going to pat it in there and outline the whole thing with the string. Okay, now that we're at the end, we can see where we are able to trim it, get the extra tail off, and then just kind of smush it right into the little pile of glue. You can go along with your finger and really press down now and make sure that all those little parts of the string are in the glue. Okay, fix up anything that might be moving around. There we go. Okay, yep, just really make sure it's in there good. Okay, cool. So then we would just sit and let it dry. And I want to show some other ideas too. Another idea for a variation on this, now you could do a whole bunch of these the same size with different color tissue paper, and that's always an option. But you could also do smaller ones. So I have, you know, like a half page size instead of a whole page. And you could even do really, really small ones. Now, of course, with something like this, you might have to get creative on what kind of string you're using. I don't know if yarn would be the easiest thing to use to outline these, but maybe they don't really need an outline, so that'd be fine too. Or you could let them dry and you could paint an outline on them with black paint or white paint when you're done. So that'd be another cool option. You just take a hole puncher, punch it in the head or on one of the wings, and then hang it up in your window with something on a suction cup. Super easy to do. Let the kids cut their own tissue paper. You know, tissue paper is so cheap. I get mine from the dollar store. I also get it from when people give you a gift. And then there's a lot of really nice colorful tissue paper in the gift bag. So I always save that stuff. That's why a lot of these are really crinkly already, because they probably were mushed up in the bottom of a gift bag. And then I took it out and like a weirdo flattened it out right there at the dinner table and said I was going to save it. So I do that with all of them. But because they're really good colors and they're really good for crafting, and then if the kid goes to cut their little squares of tissue paper and maybe they mess up or they cut them too small or they don't rip them the right way, then that's fine because your tissue paper was either free or from the dollar store, so it's a really cheap thing to let them mess up and just to try it on their own, you know, let them try it.